In this movie, I'll show you how to customize Photoshop's toolbox. Now, there's two ways to access this feature. One is to go up to the Edit menu and choose the toolbar command. Now, not to get too fussy about this, but this is the first and only time that Adobe has ever referred to Photoshop's toolbox as a toolbar. Toolbars are well known to be horizontal. We're talking about the vertical toolbox over here on the left-hand side of the screen, which is also called the Tools panel in the documentation. But whatever its name, it refers to the toolbox. Your other option is to right-click on this little ... icon down here at the bottom of the toolbox and choose Edit Toolbar in order to bring up this dialog box here. Now, you can dismiss tools by dragging them over into the Extra Tools pile on the right side of the toolbox. You can bring them back by dragging them into the Toolbar pile over here on the left side of the dialog box. You also have the option of clearing all the tools. Notice that. And now, if I were to click the Done button, I would find myself with nothing more than a rectangular marquee tool. But notice if I click and hold on that tool, I end up with a flyout menu of every other tool inside the software. What I really want to do, however, is choose Edit Toolbar once again, and now I'll bring back the tools by clicking on the Restore Defaults button. And let's say I want to be a little more careful about which tools I dismiss. I'll grab this guy, the single row marquee tool, and drag it and drop it into the Extra Tools pile. And I'll also grab single column marquee tool, and I can either drag it loose, like so, or I could drag it and drop it into the same group. Now, the Quick Selection tool and the Magic Wand tool have absolutely nothing whatsoever in common. And so I'm going to grab the Magic Wand tool and drag it out slightly so that it appears in a separate slot. The fact that it's still sharing that same shortcut is just fine. All right, now I'll scroll down the list to the Slice Select tool and notice that it mysteriously has a keyboard shortcut. I had gotten rid of that with my custom D key shortcuts. And so what I'm going to do at this point is click the Done button in order to update the toolbox. And you can see that the Marquee Tool flyout menu now contains nothing more than the rectangular and elliptical marquees, and that the Quick Selection tool and the Magic Wand tool, both of which have their uses, are independent of each other. We are experiencing a little bit of wackiness here. Notice that the ruler tool is showing up in the eyedropper tool slot, and the red eye tool is showing up in the healing brush slot. If that bothers you, by the way, a little bit of a trick, you can switch back to the rectangular marquee tool, since it's the default tool for its slot. And then you can go up to the tool icon on the far left side of the horizontal options bar, right-click on it and choose Reset All Tools. And that's going to prompt an alert message, at which point click OK, and that will go ahead and reset those tools on the far left side of the screen. You should note, however, that you've reset all of the tools options as well. All right, but the problem I want to solve is that my keyboard shortcuts are messed up. So I'll press Control-Shift-Alt-K or Command-Shift-Option-K on a Mac to bring up my keyboard shortcuts. Notice that my set reads D keys for Photoshop CC modified. Don't know how that happened, but to unmodify things, all you need to do is press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac to switch that Cancel button to a Reset button and then click on it, and that will reset all of your shortcuts, at which point click OK. And now notice if I were to once again right-click on the ... icon at the bottom of the toolbox, notice that it brings up Edit Toolbar along with the missing tools, the ones that I hid. And now I'll just go ahead and choose that command to once again bring up the Customize Toolbar dialog box. And if I scroll down here, you can see that both of the slice tools no longer have a keyboard shortcut. Incidentally, you can change the shortcuts from this dialog box just by clicking on a tool like so and entering a letter. I don't want to do that, however, so I'll just press the Escape key, and then I'll drag the slice tool over, and I'll drag the other slice tool into the same group. All right, now I want to get rid of the 3D material eyedropper tool, so I'll drag it over. And I want to remove the ruler, note, and count tools to a different group. And so I'll drag the eyedropper tool up like so, and then I'll drag the color sampler tool to that same group, and I'll click on the outside. Notice the difference between clicking on a tool, in which case you see a blue rectangle around it, versus clicking on the outside of the group, in which case you see a blue rectangle around the entire thing. All right, now I'm going to click on this group just to make sure it's selected, and then I'll drag it all the way down the list. So you just want to drag it to the end, in which case you'll invoke an auto scroll like so. Then I'm just going to drop it into place right here above the zoom tool, which I'm going to get rid of because I never ever go to that tool and select it. And I'm going to get rid of the hand tool as well. That's going to leave the rotate view tool in place. Now I'll scroll up the list a little bit, I'll grab the entire group for the two arrow tools right here. And so you need to click on that group to select it and then drag it down the list like so in order to drop it after the shape tools. And I'm going to get rid of these text tools that I never use, including the two mask tools, which are a duplication of effort. And I never use the vertical type tools, so I'll get rid of it. And then I'll drag this horizontal type tool to above the pen tool, and I'll click on the group for the shape tools and drag it and drop it above the pen tools as well. All right, now speaking of the pen tools, we don't need the add anchor point tool, and we don't need the delete anchor point tool either. All right, now notice the order of your extra tools. That is the order in which you will see them in that deleted tool flyout menu. And so I want to make sure this 3D tool isn't appearing at this location. So I'll drag it and drop it down at the bottom of the list. And then I'll select the group for the hand and zoom tools, and I'll drag them and drop them to the bottom as well. All right, now I'll scroll up this left-hand list, and let's say you want to combine a couple of groups together. For example, I want to combine the blur, sharpen, and smudge tools with the dodge, burn, and sponge tools. And so I'll select that top group and drag it and drop it to below the sponge tool right there, and now you can see all 6 of them are grouped together. The fact that they have different keyboard shortcuts does not matter. And by the way, notice this checkbox right here. It's going to disable the shortcuts for any hidden tools, by the way. If you don't want it to be that way, you can turn the checkbox off. All right, I'm going to grab this 3D tool and drag it and drop it onto the other one over here in the left-hand list. And now I'll scroll up a little bit. I don't want the magic eraser, so I'll drag it and drop it to about here, let's say. And I'm going to get rid of a couple of other tools here, including the color replacement tool, which has a keyboard shortcut of B, but as soon as I move it over into the left-hand list, that keyboard shortcut will no longer work. The same goes for the pattern stamp tool. I'm going to drag it and drop it over there. And I'm going to grab these history tools right here, the history brush and the art history tool. I'll click on a group and drag it and drop it to the bottom of that list, the brush tool list, that is to say. And now, notice this group that contains the healing brushes. I'm going to take the red eye tool, which just frankly I never use, and I'll drag it and drop it into this list over here. And I'll go ahead and keep the patch tool and the content aware move tool. They might come in handy. And I'm going to take the clone stamp tool, which, whether you like it or not, is just a dumb healing brush. It just clones without healing. And I'll grab it and drag it and drop it to below the standard healing brush like so. Again, the fact that these tools have different keyboard shortcuts is not a problem at all. And I think that's pretty much it. I'll just go ahead and scroll up the list and make sure that I'm happy with what I see. And I think I am. Now, you also have the option of turning on and off the icons that appear at the bottom of the toolbox. And so, for example, let's say that I'm comfortable switching screen modes by pressing the F key. Then I'll just go ahead and turn this guy off, and it disappears from the bottom of the toolbox, at which point I'll click the Done button in order to accept that change. Now notice the occupant of this very bottom tool slot appears as a single row marquee, but that's going to change as soon as I switch back to a different tool, at which point we will restore that ... Speaking of which, there's a little Easter egg you might want to know about. I'll go ahead and right click on that ... and choose Edit Toolbar once again. And instead of clicking the Done button, I'll press the Shift key and click Done. And now if I switch to a different tool, that ... changes to a banana. So that is an option if you want to take advantage of it. If that's not something you want, then you just right-click on the banana, choose Edit Toolbar, and click Done once again, this time without pressing the Shift key. And now if you switch away from the tool, the ... is restored. What if you don't want anything to appear here at all? Then you right-click once again, or you can click and hold, and then you choose Edit Toolbar and turn off that very first show icon, at which point you'll see the ... disappear in real time. Now let's say you want to save a preset, then just go ahead and click on the Save Preset button, and I'm going to save my settings as much shorter toolbox, at which point I'll click the Save button and save over the one I had before. If you want to load a preset, then you click on the Load Preset button. Now I'll just go ahead and click Done. And the great thing about not having that ... icon is it doesn't invite other people to modify your toolbox. But of course, if you're not seeing that option and you want to edit the toolbox, then you go up to the Edit menu and choose the Toolbar command, which will bring you right back. Now, of course, for purposes of training here, I don't want to muddy the waters. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the Restore Defaults button and then click Done in order to restore all of the tools in more or less their default locations. And I say more or less because up here we have the single row marquee, then we've got the ruler tool, the red eye tool, and so forth. Again, if I'm not happy with that, then I would select a tool that does have the proper default, because if I leave this guy selected, he will not change back. And then I will right-click on its icon on the far left side of the options bar, choose Reset All Tools, and then click OK in order to reset the default occupants of each tool slot. And then I'll go ahead and switch back to the marquee tool. And that is how you customize the toolbox to suit your exact needs here inside Photoshop.